Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about cultural pride and say something specifically to dads. Today is actually Passover 2020. We are having to stay in our houses anyway, and I thought I would tell you just a little bit about the season, about what we're experiencing, and I really want to get into Galatians. I'll do a lot of stuff on that, but it's just not the time right now to do it quite yet. So anyway, 2 nights ago, my wife and I, Amy, we did a foot washing and a communion service, and we did it via Zoom. And so we did the communion part together on Zoom, and then we did the foot washing together alone. In fact, Amy and I used this bowl. You can probably see it right there behind me. And we put the chairs over here, and I washed her feet, and she washed my feet. And this is all modeled on John chapter 13. And, it's kind of neat. I think it's neat because to be able to be on the same page theologically with your wife and to serve her in that way and for her to serve me, it was just a beautiful night. Now, last night we did a Passover Seder, or just, basically an order of service. Don't think Jewish at all. In fact, our setup is pretty simple. I didn't take a lot of pictures or anything, but I'll just show you a picture of our basic setup on our table, just to show you it wasn't all that complicated. It just wasn't. Now, about the cultural pride thing. So, I don't know why more Christians don't have FOMO on this. What I am experiencing presently with doing the communion night, the foot washing night, and then doing Passover last night. Today's the first day of unleavened bread, and we got all the yeast out of our house. And we talked about last night about why that's important, because just because we've come out of Egypt or sin doesn't mean we don't still struggle with Egypt or sin. And so it's a yearly reminder that we need to get that out of our lives. And of course, it's God that does the sanctifying by the Spirit, but at the same time, it's a process. And you know as well as I know that we can say no to the Lord. And so we can be obstinate and not want to follow in God's ways and so forth. And God gives us free will anyway. I mean, we can say no. And I don't want to be that kind of believer. I want to say yes. But here's the thing. Last night was Passover. And to be able to sit at that table and to know that 2,000 plus years ago, I mean, it's both celebratory. We know that Jesus or Yeshua has risen from the dead, but it's also this we are doing something to commemorate seriously that our Messiah died as the Passover lamb on the cross for our sins. And that's meaningful. When I was growing up, we didn't do that. We had something called Good Friday, but I don't really understand why we did it that way. And I'll get to that in a second. This is the way that Yahweh has asked us to commemorate, to observe. And by the way, Jesus says, teach them to observe all that I've commanded you. These are the observances. To observe in a way that is consistent with what happened to Jesus, our Messiah. And so, we call it Palm Sunday. I mean, at least I did growing up, but it's not. It's really what happened on the Sabbath prior to the crucifixion, is that Jesus came in on a donkey, and it was on the Sabbath. And then during that time, the Pharisees and people are inspecting this perfect lamb, and the one that's really doing the expecting is the Father, and the Father deems Jesus a righteous sacrifice. And then we have Passover, and that's when all the Jewish families would have been preparing their Passover meals. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would not have wanted to be one of the ignorant ones when here I am just doing this religious activity, And the real lamb is actually dying on the cross for my sins. So, and that's part of the thing is I want you to know last night was not a religious activity for me. My Messiah has died on the cross for my sins. And I was able to recognize that in such a way that was honoring to both the Lamb, to Jesus, and to the Father. I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. And so, this is a rich narrative. And here's the thing. Why not? Why is there no FOMO? I mean, these things are so beautiful. It's the way God asked us to do it. It's instructive. It makes disciples. It tells people about the narrative. It allows us to be serious when we need to be serious, celebratory when we need to be celebratory. You know, it just does all that stuff. It teaches us. And then we have first fruits coming up. That's when Jesus raised from the dead. That would be this Sunday, which happens to correspond with Easter. It just happens to do it this year. And then we count that Omer. You know, Jesus raised from the dead as the first fruit, but he did it for a purpose. And that way there might be a harvest. 50 days later, there will be a harvest of people who have the Torah by the Spirit being inscribed on their hearts. Wow. It's just amazing. In other words, what I'm telling you is I'm getting to press into a consistent narrative, one that celebrates the God that I put my faith in. I'm saved by grace, but I also get to respond to that grace by being obedient and showing my love. And so I want you to know that that's what's going on. Now, about the cultural pride. A lot of people ask me, well, how do you know you're right? How do you know? Well, if you just read the scriptures and ask yourself some honest questions, why did we do away with that stuff? And are you reading correctly when you say that, you read things like in Hebrews that the law is becoming obsolete? In what way is it becoming obsolete? Maybe you've misread that. I misread it. And so I grew up with Easter. I grew up with Good Friday. I grew up with those sorts of things. And when someone came and told me about this, it was only my pride that didn't allow me to see it. Well, here's the thing is I eventually got to get over your pride. So, and part of the pride was I was a senior pastor of a church. If I changed the way that I was doing things, I took a big risk in alienating part of the congregation and the money and part of it is altruistic. I mean, I had staff, right? So, how was I going to pay them? So there's a lot of pride, a lot of scaredness involved. So at some point, you just got to get over that. And so the more I read the scriptures, the more I was honest with it and did my honest study, I made the change. Now, I understand, and I get this, of how solidified a culture can become in a person's life. And here's the pride part. And I get this. So just know that I'm sympathetic. People don't like being wrong. They don't like being in control. Or not. They don't like being not in control. People, they don't like change, and they don't like not doing things in the way that they've always done or it feels right. People, a lot of things feel right that are not right. And it's prideful to stay in those patterns. So I would say make the switch. Be a little dangerous. I have. And here I am today. I swallowed my pride. And my testimony is that I love Jesus in the Spirit. Now, here's the thing. I grew up charismatic, remember? So I really thought that obedience was moment by moment, pressing into the Spirit. And here's the thing. Everything that I'm telling you is not to the exclusion of that. I am still like that. I still pray earnestly. I still want to hear from the Lord. I still want to be prophetic appropriately. But I can do these other things and still be that. It's not like I'm losing. Frankly, I'm gaining everything. And what I mean by gaining everything is You know how cool it is to know that when Jesus said he came for the lost sheep of Israel, that I know what that means? You know how cool it is to be able to make sense of the things that Jesus is saying? And that what Paul is saying, that the Bible, the whole narrative, the whole thing of the scripture makes sense all together? Now, having said that, I think that a lot of people don't want to do what I say we should be doing for two reasons. I think number one, there's a lot of fear that you are doing now works righteousness. No, all you're doing is being obedient. Legalism and obedience are two different things. There's nothing wrong with being obedient. And then number two, I think people are fearful that if they do the Passover, that they're sacrificing Jesus all over again. No, that's not what's happening. You know, if we have lamb with our meal, we know that Jesus died. This is an object lesson. We know that he was our sacrifice. I gotta switch gears here for a second because the video will get long. Dads, it is your responsibility to know the feast dates. It is your responsibility to lead your family in these things. When we relegate our beliefs only to spiritualness and prayer, which is vitally important, and feelings and all that, no wonder oftentimes we'll find it female-led. This is the way that Yahweh has designed ladies. You know, men don't want to be in these prayer hours for long periods of time and such. Now, look, we should be, but I'm just saying natural disposition. Men naturally are doers. We're Braveheart people. We want to see things in concrete, and we want order. Yahweh has given us that order. And to lead our families shamelessly, fearlessly, and to show our families, I am brave and I will take that day off of work. I am brave and I will go against culture. I am brave and I will show you how I bend the knee to Yeshua. I will show you that I'm a man that has sin in my life. And I want to eradicate that sin. And I'm going to yearly remind myself by getting the yeast out of my home. Man, this is your job. And now I say all this, and I want you to know I'm completely sympathetic. For many years, I didn't take the day off of work for two reasons. Number one, I thought I'd be culturally shamed, and I couldn't lose the income. And I've made a decision in recent years to change that. And I'm thrown caution to the wind, completely to the wind, and I will fight to obey. But you see, that's the key thing. As a man, I was actually designed to fight. And this is good for me. I'm designed this way. So anyway, take it for what it's worth. I'll get into Galatians soon. Right now, with the COVID thing, and today is Passover. You won't see it on Passover, but you get the idea. So I want to challenge you in that, and I'll see you next week.